Now I want to get all of the listings. To do this, I need to use a repeating group. Repeating groups store lists, and each of these little items will hold a different listing. If we want the type of content to be listing and then our data source to just be a search for all of the listings in the database, it is currently returning a list of listings, and that's what this repeating group will display. I'm going to uncheck set a fixed number of rows, so if I have 100 listings in the database, this repeating group will grow to have 100 of these cells, as they're called. And then we can leave a fixed number of columns. I just want to show you the power of a repeating group. I can only draw into the first cell, because whatever I draw there is automatically repeated in all the other cells. In repeating groups, you primarily have to use dynamic data. If I were to write hello here, all of these repeating groups will just show hello. So we can use that to our advantage and show the current cell's listing, which is different for each of these cells, the current cell's listing's address, for example. See this, and it is showing the addresses of 4 listings, and I currently only have 4 listings in my database. Just like groups, repeating groups also have the container layout, but this has to do with each individual cell. I want this to just be a row container layout. It doesn't matter that much, and you'll see why in a second. And then I want it to stretch the entire page. Just want to add some margins. And this will put it more in the center. Perfect. In terms of styling, we just want to remove the border. So last time we spent all this time making this pretty nice looking group to display all the data, and it would be a shame if we had to waste that. So I'm going to copy that over and actually paste it into the cell of a repeating group. Now if we preview this, we can see that this thing is displayed for each of our listings. But something interesting is happening. Instead of showing the information of the listing that belongs to the particular cell, it's just showing this generic Mackenzie Avenue. But if we look, this all looks like it is working dynamically. It's referencing the parent group's listing. Okay, let's look at what our parent group actually constitutes of. Inside the repeating group, we have this group listing, and if we remember, we set it up to just grab the most recent listing. If we remove that data source and instead make it the current cell's listing, and then preview it, we can see the information of all of the different houses, which is exactly what we want. Now, it's looking a little funky. And do we really want it all stacked like this? I would much rather be able to see 3 on my page. This is all a formatting issue. I am going to go here, and right now I have a fixed number of 1 column. But if I make it 3, suddenly the information is displayed this way. We can preview that and we see it like this, but it's still looking a little funky. Let's look at our repeating group listing and what it's doing. Right now, it's fitting its width to its content. If we uncheck that box, you can see that each of these will stretch and grow to cover the entire thing of the cell. Okay, looking better. But we can do more. On this group listing, we can add some margins. I'm going to add 16 pixels of margins on all sides. And we are displaying all of the information. One thing is that we're seeing these little lines. That's because on our repeating group, we are showing separators, which are these lines that are separating each of the cells. I'm just going to add none. We can see those disappear in the UI grid builder, and we can see them disappear on our preview. And all of this information is updating dynamically. Look at our repeating group, and it is grabbing these lists of the 4 listings that I have in my thing, and then each group is given 1. Repeating groups are your best friend when it comes to working with the database and dynamically updating information, and it all just has to do with the design of the first thing because it's replicated throughout. Let's see how this fares responsively. As we get smaller, these cells get smaller as well. We see it keep getting squishier and squishier until mobile, where it's still trying to fit 3 listings on 1 row, and that is not working out too well. For this, we need to use breakpoints. We did the similar thing on our header. When the page width is less than 992, is less than 992, we want columns to be 2. And then when it is less than 556, we want the columns to just be 1. Now we can look at this, and we are showing 2 listings per row. It's looking much better, and we get down to mobile, we are only showing 1. We can also see that these margins are a tad too much, and that has to do with the repeating groups margins. So we also want to set all of the margins to be 16 instead of 32. This will just look a lot cleaner on mobile, and it'll give us some more screen size to play around with. And that looks great. I want this little dialog to also be smaller, so we can make the font size 12. And then at this point, reset. I also want this to be smaller so we can add the same condition onto our text, except I'm going to make this 556, and then, and then we can make the font size 12 instead. And just in general, it's probably a good idea to say fit width to content, and then fit height to content. And we can add some padding on all sides. We can see this shrink a little, and that's looking better. Perfect. So we not only made a fully functional repeating group, we also made a beautiful one. To have these houses in the database, I needed to go manually in there and create all of them. In our next video, we'll make it so that a user can add a new listing.